Hey minions, welcome to Crank It Up. I'm Jim Price, and on this episode of the Gauntlet, I want to talk about the other rage quit inducing team, Sumo Bear Calvary. This was originally going to be a Call of the Week episode because these two factions have a lot in common, but they are also constructed in a way that can be devastating when combined together, particularly in two-player. For this team, I wanted to start from the perspective of Major Ursa. I don't consider the Bear Calvary to be weak, and therefore didn't expect them to get a Titan, but my best guess has always been that they needed more movement to trigger their Cub Scouts. Major Ursa provided that in renewable form. The Sumos add additional movement, some of which is renewable, but they also solve two big problems with the Bear Calvary. They add permanent power which the Cub Scouts need, and they provide some much needed card draw. The Bear Calvary faction is defined not by the Bear Calvary, but by the Cub Scout. Moving an enemy minion alone is good, but not great, because I prefer to use that power against them. So I'm either pushing you off a base to try to score it, in which case the net breakpoint reduction may be 0, or I'm pushing you onto a base I'm trying to score, in which I didn't add any more power, but you did. So the ability to stall and possibly destroy someone is the true goal, as it can create more destruction than even the most destruction-prone factions. But the Cub Scouts want permanent power increases, which their own faction cannot provide. The Sumos have several ways to do this. The Rookie Sumo can supply a power counter easily because the minion can be on any base. Fighting Spirit Prize has great granularity, as you can split them between two minions or double up on the same minion. But powering up the Cub Scout is not enough. You need the means to move minions to them. I already mentioned Major Ursa, who can rearrange minions of power 3 or less and send them into your Cub Scout. You only need one counter to boost the Cub Scout into that range for destruction. The Sumos have a double feature that is objectively better than your Screwed, because Grasp the Belt can move everyone your Screwed can move, but they can also move themselves, which has its uses. Mostly, you will just use this as a means to destroy someone. Third tier can push minions away and get a card as a result, while Yokozuna can move minions repeatedly. I personally might prefer the card draw, but having the option is great. This is in addition to all the Bear Calvary movements you already had. High Ground makes this even easier, as it takes the power level out of the equation and just relies on minion presence. Between the two king minions, you can prevent your minions from being destroyed, and you can prevent them from being moved. Together, this makes it really hard for a minion of sufficient power to be removed from play. This is a base where I actually like the Polar Commando because it becomes 6 power, which is ordinarily hard to manipulate anyway. Your Pretty Much Borscht has always been brutal with High Ground, but now you can do it again with Body Slam. In 2-player, these cards are effectively the same. To have 2 total base resets is crushing. With all this movement, if you don't end up destroying everyone, you should be able to overtake them normally. Both factions have above average printed power, with both king minions being 6 power. The Sumos have a good mix of burst power to combine with steady power increases. They also have Bulking Stew, a perfectly granular action that really supports this team, as the power counters can be placed anywhere. This team, by its very nature, is going to spread out, so having an action that can supply power to multiple bases really helps, as you don't need to dump it all on one minion. Because of this, you can get an efficient victory on a Polar Commando base by using the counters to buff that as your only minion, pushing everyone else onto that base, and getting a victory using only a single minion. Card draw is so important to the Bear Calvary because their lowest tiered minions are so tied together that you really need both to be effective. Everyone loves card draw, but the Bear Calvary desperately need it, and the Sumos provide it. They can draw at least 5 cards from actions and 3 cards from minions, plus whatever Yokozuna gives you. This not only makes Bulking Stew powerful, but gives you the cards you need to discard counters for your Cub Scouts. If you get to your top tiers, you can be boosting 2 minions per turn, and the Bear Calvary do have limited self-movement to combine with the Sumo self-movement. With all the power counters that are in place, the power from Major Ursa, and the mobile nature of all enemy movement, you have a lot of ways to manipulate the board and maximize your efficiency. As far as summons go, Commission is one of my least favorite, but there are some fun ways you can use this card with this team. You can use it to play a third tier to move 2 minions, one small and one of any power, and draw a card as a result. Then move the small minion back with another third tier to draw another card. This may even result in a destruction on the second occasion. I usually like having one action destruction card on my team, but this team has two, which might be overkill for many combinations, but good against a select few. For most teams, this does provide a means for an automatic card to discard, and that's significant because there are no treasures in this tournament, so you know at the start of the match whether or not you'll need these cards, and this team is going to be discarding cards. This team works by aiming for total base control, moving minions where they aren't supposed to be, and reaping rewards for doing so. And they do it well. But like every team, they have weaknesses. It's hard to stop movement and destruction without being banned from the tournament, but there are cards that can prevent minions here from being affected. Of course, these are typically play on base actions that can be destroyed by this team, but at least they slow the opponent down. The Vigilantes are a good counter because they have a lot of immunity. Additionally, they possess the means to actually disrupt a minion without moving or destroying it, which can open the floodgates and allow everyone else to be destroyed accordingly. The truth is, the Bear Cavalry doesn't have a lot of pure destruction, just Bear Hug. Everything else triggers from movement, so if you can stop the movement, you can stop most of the destruction. Moai can serve as a good staging minion, and Wayfinders can stay on top of the power level of the Cub Scouts, so it's really just high ground you need to watch out for. And if this combination loses high ground, it's a big loss as they have no action recursion or even minion recursion. Like Dragon Tricksters, they suffer when there is more ground to cover, as adding additional bases can create safe spaces for your minions, especially if that is a base you can lock down. As a combination without specials, Swarm factions can easily overtake them because you can do nothing and just explode on your turn. Whether it's playing many minions on the same turn to close a base, or building an instant singularly powerful minion, this team cannot defend against playing conservatively. They want to manipulate other minions, so if you withhold that, you end up manipulating them. They have a great burst in the form of Bulking Stew in one of their 6s, but that requires them to spend a lot of their cards, which gives you an opportunity to play when they have nothing to do. In terms of the power they can drop by themselves, they are averaging about 10 power, maybe 12 or 14 with the right action. It means dropping one of their 6s or using a Polar Commando as a 6, or using Commission to play both of their 6s, in which case the double invulnerability comes off the board. The best way to beat this combo is to not necessarily try to beat them, but to surprise them. There are other combinations that can drop more power in a turn, and patience and saving the right cards could be the key to victory. An incremental approach is not necessarily going to work, and while the Dragon Tricksters can slow you down on their turn, this team cannot actually do anything to you on yours. In a battle of bursts, they may not be able to win, even with their above average printed power, but against an engine faction, they should be able to control the board. What do you think of the Sumo Bear Cavalry? Let me know in the comments. Next week we will look at two teams that focus on specials and stealing bases, where no lead is ever safe. One of these is one of my teammates' favorite pairings, while the other is really fun for me particularly. That's it for this team. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe. Let's shut it down.